What happens after death? Do we vanish into nothingness? Or is there another life beyond this one? For centuries, stories of reincarnation have emerged in various cultures, but few are as remarkable and well documented as that of Katsugorō, an 8-year-old boy who lived in Japan during the late Edo period in the 19th century. His case was first recorded in February 1823 by Ikeda Kenzan, a former feudal lord and scholar. Later that same year, Okado Denhachiro, a high-ranking samurai, conducted an official investigation, followed by Hirata Atsutan, a renowned academic who published his observations in June 1823. These detailed reports make it one of the oldest documented cases of reincarnation in Japan. Later on, Lafcadio Hearn, a famous Western writer and translator, helped spread the story to the rest of the world by translating these historical records into English. Thanks to his work, Katsugoro's case gained international recognition and became one of the fundamental examples in reincarnation research. Dr. Ian Stevenson, a leading figure in the scientific investigation of reincarnation, cited this case as a significant influence on his methodology and approach. At only 8 years old, Katsugorō claimed to have lived before as a boy named Tozo, describing with astonishing precision his past family, home, and even his own burial. One of the leading experts in this field is Dr. Masayuki Okado, a professor at Chubu University in Japan and a respected researcher in the study of past life memories. Inspired by the pioneering work of Dr. Ian Stevenson, Okado has documented multiple cases of Japanese children who remember past lives with surprising detail. Professor Masayuki Okado, a renowned Japanese linguist and parapsychologist, became interested in Katsugoro's case due to its historical significance in reincarnation studies in Japan. This 19th century case, in which a child claimed to remember a past life, has been foundational in reincarnation research. Okado examined this case in depth in his book Katsugorō and Other Reincarnation Cases in Japan, where he also analyzes contemporary cases of Japanese children who claim to remember previous lives. To truly understand this case, it's important to consider that in 19th century Japan, religion was a fusion of Shintoism and Buddhism, where most people believed the spirits of the deceased remained at family altars rather than reincarnating into new bodies. Although Buddhism taught reincarnation, this idea wasn't universally accepted, and in Katsugoro's environment, his own family wasn't particularly devout. His father, Genzo, donated to monks, but didn't believe in them, and Katsugoro himself disliked Buddhist monks, which makes his story even more intriguing. Since he didn't grow up in an environment promoting reincarnation, his testimony appears to stem from a genuine experience rather than cultural influence. Katsugoro was born on October 10, 1815, in a village called Nakano, which today is Higashi Nakano, 34 kilometers from Tokyo. He was the second son of farmers. His father was named Genzo, his mother Sei, and his grandmother Suya. When Katsugoro was 8 years old, he was playing in the rice fields with his older brother Otojiro and older sister Fusa when he said, "Brother, where were you before you were born into our family?" Otojiro replied, "I don't know such a thing." Katsugoro asked the same question to Fusa. She ridiculed him, saying, "How would I know where I was before I was born? Why are you asking such stupid questions?" Intrigued by her reaction, Katsugoro asked, "So you really don't know where you were before you were born?" "Then do you know where you were before you were born?" asked Fusa. "Yes, I know very well. I was Kyubei's son. My name was Tozo," Katsugoro said. "That's very strange. I'll tell Mom and Dad," said Fusa. Katsugoro began to cry and pleaded, "Please don't tell them anything." "Okay, I won't tell them," she replied. "But the next time you misbehave or don't listen to me, I'll tell them." After that day, whenever they argued, Fusa threatened to tell their parents, making Katsugoro do whatever she said. One day, their parents noticed what was going on between the children and asked what the problem was. Fusa didn't want to say anything. They were worried Katsugoro had done something bad, so they pressured Fusa to tell the truth. Fusa told them, and Genzo, Sei, and their grandmother Tsuya found the story strange and pressed the boy to tell them more. Katsugoro said, "I was a boy who lived in Hodokubo, My mother's name was Oshizu. When I was little, Kyubei died and my mother married a man named Hanshiro. He loved me very much, but I died when I was 6. Then I entered mom's womb and was born again. No one took the child's story seriously, as it sounded too strange. After that, Katsugorō began asking his parents to take him to Hodokubo, but they didn't take him seriously. He became very persistent, and one night, while sleeping with his grandmother Tsuya, he said, "Please take me to Hodokubo. I want to see my parents." Tsuya asked him to tell her the full story. He told her in detail and asked her not to tell anyone except his parents. Katsugorō said, "When I was 4, I remembered my past life in detail, but I've forgotten many things. I shouldn't have died, but I died because I didn't take my medicine." He didn't know the cause of his death, but learned it from someone else. His date of death was February 4th, 1810. Memories of his previous life as Tozo. "When I died, I felt no pain. It was distressing for a moment, then it completely disappeared. When my body was forcefully placed into a coffin, I jumped out of my body and stood beside it. When they carried my coffin to be buried on a hill, I was on top of the white cloth covering it. When they dropped the coffin into the grave, it made a loud sound that echoed in my mind. I remember it very well. The monks were reciting a sutra, a sacred Buddhist text, but it didn't take me anywhere. I thought they were just scheming how to steal money, despicable people. So I went back home and stayed near a desk. I spoke to people, but they couldn't hear me. Then an old man with long white hair, dressed in a black kimono, appeared and said, 'Come here.' I followed him to a place I didn't know. Then I found myself in a beautiful field and started playing. The flowers were in full bloom, and when I tried to break a twig, a small crow appeared and threatened me with terrifying intensity. Even now, I feel afraid when I remember it. It must have been the guardian deity of Nakano village," said Genzo, adding, "I thought of it when Katsugorō said the bird appeared." While playing, I heard my parents and other people talking at home. I also heard the monks reading a sutra, but as I said, I found them detestable. Although I couldn't eat the hot, steaming food they offered, I could enjoy the aroma. During the Obon ceremony in July, or Festival of the Dead, I came back home and saw they had offered dumplings. I stayed around like that for a while. Then one day, while walking down a street in front of a house, Genzo's house, the old man pointed at it and said, "You will be born in that house." Following his words, I separated from the old man and stayed under a persimmon tree in the yard. After watching the house for 3 days, I entered through a window and stayed in the stove area for another 3 days. I heard my mother talking to my father about going away to a far place. Genzo's comments. It was around New Year, about 10 months before Katsugorō was born. One night, my wife and I talked and decided that since we were in such a precarious situation with my mother and 2 children to care for, my wife would go to Edo, the capital city, to work starting in March. At that time, we didn't tell my mother, but in February we spoke to her about it, and in March, my wife left for Edo. However, when she realized she was pregnant, she took a leave and returned. She must have conceived around New Year, and 10 months later, Katsugorō was born. It's incredible that Katsugorō spoke about this, as it was something only the 2 of us knew. Katsugoro's conclusion. During the pregnancy and after it, I don't remember anything strange happening. So, I believe I entered my mother's womb, though I don't remember it well. However, I do remember changing position when I thought I was causing her pain. I had no problems being born. I remembered everything until I was 4 or 5 years old, but then little by little, I began to forget. Verification of Katsugoro's past life memories. Tsuya found Katsugoro's story increasingly strange. When she went to a place where elderly women gathered, she asked, "Do any of you know someone named Kyubei who lives in the village of Hodokubo?" One of them replied, "I don't know, but I have some contacts in the village. I could ask about that person. But why do you want to know about him?" Tsuya couldn't remain silent and told them Katsugoro's story. Then, on January 7th, an old man from the village of Hodokubo arrived and said, "I know Hanshiro well, from the village of Hodokubo." Kyubei was the name of the person who later came to be called Togoro. However, he died 15 years ago, and no one knows someone named Kyubei now. Kyubei's wife's second husband is named Hanshiro. Recently, I heard about a boy who claimed to be Kyubei's son named Tozo, who died at age 6 and was born in this house. The boy's story matches many facts, so they were curious and wanted to know more, so they sent me here. Katsugoro's parents and grandmother told the elder what Katsugoro had said. Perplexed, they said goodbye to the elder, who returned to the village of Hodokubo. Now, many people heard about Katsugoro's story and came to see him. When Katsugoro went outside, people teased him, calling him the boy from Hodokubo. Feeling ashamed, Katsugoro began isolating himself at home. "That's why I said not to tell anyone my story. Things have come to this because you talked about it," Katsugoro complained to his parents. Over time, Katsugoro's desire to return to Hanshiro's house grew stronger. He even cried all night, begging Tsuya to take him there. But when asked in the morning, he said he didn't remember anything. These episodes repeated every night until his grandmother said to Genzo, "Katsugoro's desire to go where Hanshiro lives is truly strong. What he says might not be true, but I think I'd like to take him to the village of Hodokubo. For a man, it would be inappropriate, but for an old woman, it doesn't matter if she's ridiculed." Genzo agreed, and on January 20th, Tsuya took Katsugoro to Hodokubo village, located about 5.9 kilometers from Nakano village, beyond a mountain. As they walked, Tsuya asked, "Is this the house? Is that one it?" Katsugoro responded, "Not yet." And he continued guiding her until he finally announced, "This is the house." He entered, followed by Tsuya. Katsugoro had said Hanshiro's house was in the middle of 3 houses, which was correct. Tsuya asked the residents of the house the name of the owner. "Hanshiro," they replied. When she asked the name of his wife, they answered, "Shizu Oshizu." Although Hanshiro and Shizu had already heard the story, hearing it from Tsuya made them feel even more bewildered and sad. Both burst into tears. They hugged Katsugoro, looked at his face closely, and repeatedly said, "You really look like Tozo when he was 6. While holding him, Katsugoro pointed to the roof of a tobacco shop in front of Hanshiro's house and said, "That roof wasn't there before. That tree wasn't either." All of it was true, which surprised everyone even more. Hanshiro's relatives came to see Katsugoro, including the nanny of Kyubei's younger sister. She said, "This boy even resembles Kyubei," and broke into tears. Katsugoro and Tsuya returned to Nakano village that same day, but afterward, Katsugoro kept saying, "I want to go back to Hodokubo village. I want to visit Kyubei's grave." Genzo ignored Katsugoro's pleas, but on January 27th, Hanshiro came to Genzo's house to greet him. He asked Katsugoro if he wanted to go to Hodokubo village, which filled him with joy as he wished to visit Kyubei's grave. Katsugoro went to Hodokubo with Hanshiro and returned that same afternoon. Later, Katsugoro asked Genzo to take him again to Hodokubo village and to ask Hanshiro's family to become relatives. He was agreed, and while he was thinking about when to do it, was summoned by the official, the senior vassal, Okado Denhachiro, who wrote the official report for his superior, said Genzo. The case of Katsugoro was about to be formally recorded by the authorities of the Edo period. Katsugoro's attitude toward death. Genzo, Katsugoro's father, said that ever since he was born, he had never been afraid of ghosts or evil spirits. "I took care of a sick man named Genhichi, who was mentally ill. I built a hut for him to live in. When his death approached, his appearance became frightening. His brothers wouldn't go near the hut, but Katsugoro said, 'He's dying. His situation makes me sad. Please prepare enough medicine and food for him. I'm ready to take it to him any time.' And he would take it, even very late at night. When the man died, Katsugoro's brothers didn't even dare go to the bathroom, since in Japan at that time, toilets were outside the house. Katsugoro said, 'Why are you afraid of death?' and showed no sign of fear. He also said, 'I'm not afraid of death.' When asked why, he replied, I realized I was dead because other people said I was. When I died, I didn't see my body and didn't think I was dead. The moment of death wasn't as painful as others may have thought. After dying, I didn't feel hunger, cold, or heat. It wasn't that dark, even at night. No matter how far I walked, I never felt tired. When I was with the old man, I wasn't afraid of anything. People say I was reborn after 6 years, but I felt it was a much shorter time. He also said, Mitake-sama, the name of a god who dwells in the mountains, told me, "You don't have to be afraid of death." I asked, "Where did you see Mitake-sama?" But he didn't answer the question. Katsugoro's personality. Katsugoro was described as not being mature at all and enjoying loud, playful games. He seemed more intelligent than other peasant children. He liked heroic acts and showed interest in becoming a samurai. According to another description, Katsugoro seemed serious, had reddish, very short hair. His face was long, slim build, and dark skin. He had a pleasant appearance and looked like a very bright and intelligent child. Katsugoro's later years. In the city of Hino, formerly called Hodokubo, Katsugoro's story remains well known. In 2006, a research group named Umareka Wari Monogatari Tonkyu Chosadan investigated the case for the local history museum. The number of researchers was initially 32, but grew to 62 by the time the investigative report was published in 2015. Among the group were living relatives of both Katsugoro and Tozo. The report reveals remarkable discoveries, one of them titled A Note About the Reborn Katsugoro, which records the words of Oshizu. Although it's unknown who wrote it, it appears to be a direct transcription of Oshizu's own words. It shows how deeply Katsugoro felt drawn to his past life parents, and how, due to this event, both families strengthened their bonds. For example, according to the note, when Katsugoro and Genzo were investigated by an official, they were given some mementos and money. Later, when Katsugoro visited Hodokubo village at night, he slept next to Oshizu and Hanshiro, who hugged him as if he were their own son. When Hanshiro visited Nakano village, he was welcomed with sake as a gesture of hospitality. Other sources revealed that when Katsugoro was 11 years old in 1825, he became a disciple of Hirata Atsutane and studied with him for at least a year. He married twice, adopted a child in 1854, and died in 1869 at the age of 55. He lived a very simple life as a farmer. The soul does not die, it merely changes form and continues its journey.